Hello and welcome to Tim's BMW Repairs and Information. Here's a question for you. Which way should you push the Steptronic to go up or down a gear? Yeah, this is a very contentious issue. Now, I've always thought it's back to front because say I'm coming up to this junction here, so I indicate, and I would expect to put it into Steptronic and then push the gear stick forwards to select a lower gear, but it works the other way round. And that's the same on the E38 and the E39, well, up until about the year 2001. Now, most drivers in the UK, and I'm no exception, were brought up on 4-speed manual gearboxes. When we came to a stop, we'd push the gear stick forward to go into first gear. So I'm pushing it forward here. And once we got out of first gear, we push it backwards into second. So there we go, backwards into second gear. Now that's completely opposite way round to how the 840 is set up. It's set up so it does completely the opposite. Excuse me. There we go, we're out. Yeah, it's completely the opposite, and it confounded me when I first got my first Steptronic box. And I've always thought it was the wrong way round. And not only that, of course, when I got the 650, it was the other way round. So first would be forward, second is back, and so on. And when you're cruising, you want to go to a lower gear, you push it forwards. And that's caused me great confusion over the years. In fact, when I was doing my 0 to 60 acceleration tests, the eagle-eyed of you noticed I actually changed gear in the wrong direction. What I've done to my 840 though is swap it round to a position where I think it's much more natural to use. So I push forward to go into a lower gear and backwards to go into a higher gear. It feels so much more natural, and of course it's the same as the 650. I will warn you, this isn't for the faint-hearted. It sounds very easy to do, which is you remove the shifter surround and you swap a couple of wires round and you change the Legend Plate, and that's it. Yeah, the problem is there's hardly any room in there at all to get to, and it's a bit of a pig, I must admit. It'd be so easy if you didn't have the centre console fitted, but yeah, I'm not taking the centre console out just to swap over a couple of wires. It's also the sort of job you get halfway through and think, I'm not really sure I want to do this. So I'll warn you of that. Now, if you think like me that the Steptronic's always been the wrong way round, then yeah, go ahead and swap it over. And if you don't bother. It's difficult to break something, I must admit. It's just fiddly, and you've got hands like dinner plates, then you're not going to do it. It's very fiddly. Rightio, let's get on with it. Okay then, here we are, right at the start. I've done the job already, so I know what to do, and I know what to do to make it a lot easier as well. So let's go through what I learned. Right, first of all, you need the key, put it in the ignition, first position, and then make sure you can put your foot on the brake, make sure you can move the gear stick around, leave it in neutral, handbrake on, of course, because we don't want to be rolling off somewhere. Okay, so the first thing we've got to do is remove the Gaiter, and that's as far as you need to remove it. Don't need to remove it any further than that. Right, there are 2 screws holding it on. You can see one of them there, the other one's deep in there. So let's put the foot on the brake again. Put it into drive, then we can get to the first screw. I seem to have brought with me an enormous screwdriver for some reason, not quite sure why I've got this one. Right, try and keep hold of the screws. They're really fiddly as well. The whole job's fiddly, I tell you that for nothing. First one out, gear stick forward again. Let me press the button. Into park. There we go, I've got that fitted to the screw head now. Right, undo that one. Yeah, have a pair of tweezers or little pliers to retrieve the screw because it will get lost at some point. While I'm in here, I'm going to grease that as well, because that's quite worn, that is, where I've been using the Steptronic for all those years. Rightio, so the plate's loose. What we can do now is put it back and put it into Steptronic. And the next thing we need to do is to remove the connector. Now, it's very difficult to see the connector. Now, rather than show me trying to get the connector off, and it's not hard when you know how, I've done a diagram. This is the 5 series shifter plate, and of course the Legend's on the left hand side, the 841's on the right hand side, and underneath it is a connector which confounds people all the time, but it's very simple to do. Now of course we're working on it while the shifter is still going through the middle of this, and it makes it a lot more awkward. But you can lift up this side enough to get to the connector. Now the connector, if we turned it around that way and look down the side of this, looks exactly like this. So there's the bit with the Legend plate and the LEDs and all the rest of it in. The Legend plate's on that side, so that's the outside of the shifter plate, that's the inside of it. And here's a connector that goes in, and this causes utter confusion. But it's very simple. It has a little dimple on it. You press in and then pull down on that clasp, and it will move through 90 degrees to that position. And as you push it the last bit, it will pop out the connector. And so it's so simple. It makes life so much easier. And once you realise how that works, you can actually get your hand in underneath the shifter plate and actually do that just by feel. And when you finish the job, you can put the connector back in very simply. You just line it up and then push it in to the Legend plate, and the little clasp will pop back up again. You might have to just push it up past the bump, and that's it, back on again. So yeah, the connector which causes the most trouble is actually the easiest to do, as long as you know what you're doing. Now we can manipulate this off. Again, make sure you don't damage the... Oh, I found the screw. That's good. Very good. Make sure you don't damage the shifter or anything like that. Really is just a case of sort of pushing it through as best as you can. There we go, halfway through. Yeah, I'm making this look harder than it was last time. There we go. That's off. Right. Shifter plate we'll take into the workshop and change the Legend. I've obviously done this already because the plus is at the right end now. Now what we have here is a shifter plate from a BMW E39 from between 2001 and 2002. And the reason I've bought this, and it cost me about 30 quid from eBay, there's usually loads of them on eBay, so keep an eye out for them, is because the shift pattern is different compared to the E31 and the E38, of course, and the earlier E39s. Now, the E39 was the only model in that generation that got this swapped round in 2001 and 2002. And the 840s and the E38 have the plus there and the minus there. Now we're swapping electronically which way we move the shifter to go change up or down a gear. And it might not really matter to you at all. So I think, well, I never look at the Legend plate. And initially I thought, I'll never look at the Legend plate. And then I thought, oh, come on then, let's do it properly. So as I say, I bought this from eBay, and the only bit you need is this Legend plate. The rest of it is exactly the same. We start with at the back side of it and then remove all 4 screws. Rightio, we're that way up, and then this lot just falls out, and the Legend does as well. Here we go then. I've got the shifter plate out of my 840, and I've got the shifter Legend from the E39. Let's see if we can swap it round without breaking anything. Got 4 screws on it. There we go. That comes off as a whole. Right, that's off. And then can we get this off without dismembering all of the light pipes is the question. Yes, we can. I can turn it over as well. Right, that's all fiddly as usual. Right, I'm going to be very careful not to disturb any of the light pipes. Change legends. There we go, there's the new legend. Yeah, it's exactly the same as fitment as before. Yeah, jolly good. Right, then I've got to get that back in there without losing the light pipes. There we go. Now, so look right from the other side. Yep, that looks fine from the other side. Put him down flat. Swap over this bit. Get him down so he's nice and flat. Screw holes all lining up. There we go. That's all nice and in there properly. Yeah, all looks flat. Yeah, that looks fine. So I put that aside. And now what I think I'll do is I'm going to show you, I'll get you close in here and show you where everything is, because it's not immediately obvious. Rightio, with the shifter cover off, so we've got the shifter cover off, this is what we can see inside there. I'll try and zoom into a few bits to help you see. Rightio, so what we got up here, that's the shift lock solenoid, this bit here. We're not interested in that. When you've got the ignition on and your foot on the brake, it pulls in a solenoid and allows the shifter to be moved. So we're going to ignore that completely. The bits we're interested in, that's the up-down sensor for the Steptronic. So when the gear stick shifter's to the left, push it up or push it down, this notices that. It's not electronic, it's either got reed switches in it or tiny micro switch. I should think they're probably reed switches in there, not electronic. And out of it comes 3 wires. Let's pull you up a bit there. Okay, so here's the wires coming out of the up-down switch. 2 of them go off down here, and I think I can see it's a blue and it's a grey. In fact, I'm sure it is. And this bit here is a micro switch. And it's got a little roller on it. And the roller's there because as you move the shifter to the left, this rolls over the roller and that puts it into sport mode. Okay, so we're in drive, push the gear stick to the left, that presses the micro switch, we're now in sports mode. And then if we move the shifter up or down, we'd go into manual mode. So we've now got 3 wires, 2 of which go down here and then go back out again. The 2 remaining wires come up here and go to the centre of that yellow connector. And that's the one we're interested in. Right, okay, so what gets in our way to start with? Well, first of all, yeah, it's very difficult to try and get that connector out with 2 things, well, 3 things. One is that little clasp, which is a blooming nuisance. It's a circular sort of thing with pips on the end of it, so it's got a couple of pips sticking out of it. And with it closed, you can push it through a hole which is in the shifter plate. So if you squash it, you can pull it out and then it comes, you can open it up. That will get that out of the way. The other thing we have to remove is the shifter selector switch. And that's the one which actually tells the instrument cluster which gear we're in. It doesn't tell the EGS, by the way. There's a separate switch for that on the side of the gearbox. And you can see there's a fork here that goes into this selector switch, and that moves the insides of this selector switch around. Okay, so to get more space in here, what we have to do is remove the selector switch, this arc here. So I'll put you right in the middle of the picture. That's the arc. That's the wires coming out of it. And there's one screw for it, just there, a posi. And there's another screw for it at the other end, somewhere there anyway. Yeah, they're not too bad. And then you can just get that out of the way, and that gives you much better access to that connector pair, which we're looking at now. But this order of the wiring here, and I'll get you right in the middle of the picture, that will reverse the Steptronic. If we move the green and the black again, then that will reverse it back to where it was at the start. So what I've done is, let's quickly go through this, shall we, so we know what we're doing. Okay, rather than trying to use the video that I did when I did the job, it's going to be a lot easier to do diagrams. So it's absolutely impossible to try and video it from above and keep my hands out of the way. Okay, so here's the connector pair when viewed from directly above. The sort of bit in the middle here, that is the little clasp that goes over it, which we need to lift up to get out. Okay, and there's the original colours, grey, green, black and blue. Now, of course, that order is only valid if you're looking from the black side of the yellow connector. The yellow connector's got a black cover on it here, which we're going to prise off soon. So when viewed from that side, that's the order of the colours originally. Okay, so what we do first is we just lift that cover up. It's light plastic, we just lift it out of the way, pull the connector pair out so that we've got something to grab hold of. Rightio, the next thing we do is we separate the connector pair. So just lift up the skirt here and then pull the connector pair apart. And the next thing we do is we prise off that black cover. There's the black cover there. We prise it off with a little screwdriver or a scalpel. And that's what it reveals underneath, which is the terminals. These are the little tangs on the terminals which go into here. I seem to have missed out drawing those two, but yeah, we can't win them all. And I'm not going to redo it again for the 5th time, that's for sure. Okay, so that's what you see, grey, green, black and blue, when you can see the terminals through the little windows. And it's these tangs that hold these wire terminals in place. So there's a tang and that's squashed over the wire. The wire goes up through and into there, sometimes soldered in, but not usually. And that then pokes into the red side of the connector pair. There's the tang on the connector. We have to push that down, and I use a scalpel usually, or you can push it down with a tiny little screwdriver, and that allows these things to come outwards. So that's what we can see next. We poked there and there. Those terminals have come out backwards, and they're MOLES connectors, by the way, these things. There's a little tangs on them, green and black, and we've pushed them out of the connector. That's the bit that I found hardest. It might have been better to lift up the plastic just here and here and then push them through. But it was very dark at the time and I couldn't actually see what I was doing. Next thing we do is we swap over the green and the black. So now we go grey, black, green, blue, and we push them back in again. So yeah, we push these in, but make sure you have the tangs upwards. They're square section terminals. And as you push them in, these little tangs will then relocate with their windows and it will hold it in place. But just to make sure that when we rejoin the connectors, we make sure these don't push back. But we'll get onto that in a minute. Okay, so we refit the black cover. Yeah, good luck with that. First of all, I couldn't squash them together and then it pinged off somewhere, lost it somewhere. Not a problem, it isn't going to short out on anything. And then we refit the connector pair, so we bung in the red connector from that side and grab hold of these wires here just to make sure it doesn't push the black and the green back out again. It's not too hard, that bit, to be honest. And then refit the connector pair under the clasp and you're all done really. And there's the new order, grey, black, green, blue. And in that direction, the Steptronic is reversed, so higher gear backwards, lower gear forwards. If you swap them back round again, it'll go higher gear forwards, lower gear backwards. So it's those two, and they go off to the Tiptronic switch or Steptronic switch, and the grey and the blue, I think it's the blue that trundles off to the sport switch, and grey is ground, but I can't remember for sure. Don't quote me on that. Quickly whiz back through that again. Original wire order when viewed from the black side of the yellow connector, and it might be your connectors the other way up and you think, oh, it's blue, black, green, grey. I don't know what he's talking about. When it's that way up, it's grey, green, black, blue. Okay, the next thing to do, lift the clasp out of the way, connector pair comes out. Hooray, we've got the connector pair. Separate the connector pair by lifting up that little skirt. There's a little tang there from this side. You lift it up and then you can pull them apart. And you can imagine how easy this is in the limited space you've got. Yeah, it's not easy. Prise off the black cover, that exposes the tangs on the terminals. And that's what a terminal looks like. This is all housed in the yellow connector, by the way. Push down on the tangs, pull back the green and black wires, swap the positions, stick them back in again, refit the black cover if you can find it, and then remake the connector, grabbing hold of those just to make sure they don't all pop out. Refit the connector pair underneath the clasp. All done. Yeah, it sounds so easy. Right, I thought I might as well keep the video running while I put it all back together again. Rightio, so yeah, it's just a case of, after we've done everything, manipulate the gaiter through the plate, get it to about here, and then the way the connector works in reverse is as you push it in, and you won't be able to see what I'm doing, as you push it in, the clasp will go upwards. There we go. Sorry, the clasp will go downwards, and you can just push it forward and lock it in position. Right, go back into park. There we go. Now the back screw is going to be the hardest one, and also, yeah, I ought to grease that before I finish it up. Okay, let's laugh at me trying to get this screw in. That's always good fun, isn't it? Always good fun when make a complete pig's ear of it, lose the screw and have to take it all apart again. No satisfaction today. That went on perfectly. Right, foot on the brake again, key on. There we go. The front screw on, and then I think what I'll do is I'll get some grease and grease up the shifter. There we go. That's all we need to do here, of course, put that back down again, but I am going to grease this up. Yeah, that bit down there, twiddly this round. So you can see, yeah, that's got some marks on it. That will obviously need to be greased. I'll get some grease. Right, some lovely Keno. Duckham's Keno. Can't get this anymore. I just have got a toothpick. Find it useful for getting the grease on places. It's probably about all I need. But then I have to, can't put the pot down in here. It says most grease things are covered with grease. So I'll put it out the door. There we go, so we're all greased up. Now, it's confused me slightly, but the fatter bit of the gaiter goes at the back. So this has got a smaller sort of seam. We on? Yeah, we're on. Back into neutral. Don't scratch the surround. Then poke it all back down again like that. There we go. Oh, lovely. Into park. There we go. Let's make sure everything's working fine. Yeah, all the lights are still working. And the MS one, right. It's in SD now. If I push forward, we should go into M1. We're in M1. Backwards, M2. Backwards again, M3. So that's it. Absolutely perfect. Back into park. Interestingly enough, did you know that the pre-Steptronic gearboxes you could drive as a Steptronic box? And I used to do that on my E32. And there's a way to get all 5 gears. Now on the E32 it says drive 432. That's right, there's no 1. So you think, well, that's no good, I haven't got first gear. Well, the way you do it is if you're starting at a junction, you pull it all the way back into second and then press the sports button, put it into S mode, and that puts it into first gear. And as you accelerate away, yeah, it does sound quite awkward, but you get used to it quite quickly. It's that as you accelerate away, you put it back into normal mode or economy mode. That gives you second. Then you've got third, fourth, and as you go into drive, it'll give you 5th gear. Yeah, it's quite good fun once you get used to it. Yeah, I've always wanted a Steptronic box, so yeah, but was a bit disappointed to find out it was back to front. And of course, saying that reminds me, oh, whole queue of stuff going on here. Let's go. We're out. Yeah, of course, the direction I've changed it to, which is a lower gear forward, higher gear backwards, I can understand why some people would think that's the wrong way round, and that's because of the pre-Steptronic boxes, which had drive and then 4-3-2 backwards. Being brought up on 4-speed manuals, then it's much more sense to me pushing it forward into a lower gear. And there we go then, all done. Yeah, I much prefer it this way. Yeah, Steptronic forward for a lower gear. Makes so much more sense than sort of going Steptronic, they're going backwards into a lower gear. Most peculiar. Yeah, I'm used to it already. I've only got the direction wrong once, and that's all. I've managed to keep it the same all the time, and that's obviously because the 650 goes in the same direction as this does now, which is higher gear back, lower gear forward. Yeah, the job isn't that hard really, is it? I mean, the problem is the amount of access to that yellow connector. Now, I found a picture of a shifter assembly on eBay because he's flogging one for 375 quid, God blimey. And that shows the yellow connector from the side, obviously the center console's on it, and it gives you a good view of where that connector is and why there's so little access. You can see the arc of the selector switch and the yellow connector underneath it. And from the other side, you can see the tip switch, the up-down switch, which is quite a large lump, isn't it, for what it is? So I'm still confused as to what exactly is inside it and why it needs to be quite that big. It's not electronic, that's for sure. It's definitely either reed switches or micro switches of some sort, because it still works when it hasn't got any electricity going to it. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Keep the comments coming. I love the comments. And keep subscribing. And if it helped you, put the thumbs up, of course. And I'll see you in the next video.